Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to share a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. This is a story about betrayal, deception, manipulation, and ultimately, sweet justice. If you have ever been taken for granted by the people who should love you the most, this one is for you. Before we begin, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. Tell me what time it is in your city right now. It truly brings me great joy to know my listeners are tuning in from all corners of the world. Now, let me tell you how a proud father, a man who spent his entire life building a legacy, became a prisoner in his own home, and how he taught his ungrateful daughter and her scheming husband a lesson they would never, ever forget. My name is Robert Sullivan. I am 68 years old, and for 35 years, I worked as a senior vice president at one of the largest financial institutions on the East Coast. I spent my entire career analyzing risk, detecting fraud, and protecting assets. He could spot a forged signature from across the room. He could tell you within seconds whether a transaction was legitimate or a carefully crafted deception. He had trained hundreds of young bankers to spot the subtle warning signs of financial crimes. He thought I had seen it all. He thought nothing could surprise me anymore. But nothing in my professional career could have prepared me for the betrayal that was waiting inside my own home. The betrayal would come not from a stranger, not from a faceless criminal, but from my own flesh and blood. The people I had loved and protected for my entire adult life would become my greatest enemies. It all started on a warm September evening. He was sitting in my favorite leather armchair in the living room, watching the sunset paint the Boston sky in shades of deep orange and brilliant gold. The house was quiet. So quiet. It had been 3 years since my beloved wife, Margaret, had passed away from a sudden, unexpected heart attack. She had been the heart of our home, the warm center of our family. Without her, the sprawling 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs of Boston felt more like a cold mausoleum than a loving home. Our only daughter, Emily, lived 2 hours away with her husband, Derek. They visited on major holidays and birthdays, always rushing in and out with hollow pleasantries and carefully timed exits. He never complained. I understood they had their own lives to live, their own careers to pursue. He was proud of the woman Emily had become. She had graduated from a prestigious university with honors. She had married a successful businessman. She had built a life for herself. But then, the phone call came, and everything changed. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something important," Emily said. Her voice was trembling in that rehearsed way she always used when she wanted something from me. He had heard that tone countless times before. It was the same tone she had used as a teenager when she wanted to borrow the car or needed extra money for a school trip. He set down my coffee mug and braced myself. "What is it, sweetheart? What is wrong?" "Things have been really hard for us lately," she began, her voice cracking with manufactured emotion. "Derek's business has hit a rough patch. He lost his biggest client. We are behind on our mortgage payments. We might lose the house. We don't know what to do anymore." My heart ached for my daughter. He had worked too hard to see her struggle. He had sacrificed so much to give her a better life. "I can help you with a loan," I offered quickly, without hesitation. "I have savings set aside for emergencies." "How much do you need?" "We do not want to take your money, Dad, Emily said softly, and I could almost hear the practiced sincerity in her voice. That would not be fair to you. You worked so hard for your retirement. We were thinking of something different. He waited, my heart pounding with anticipation. What do you have in mind? Maybe we could move in with you for a while, Emily suggested. Just until we get back on our feet. He could take care of you. You are always talking about how lonely you are in that big house. It would be good for both of us. You would have company, and we would have a place to stay while Derek rebuilds his business. He sat there in stunned silence. The thought of having my daughter back under my roof, filling the empty rooms with laughter and life, was too tempting to resist. He imagined morning coffees together, evening dinners, and long conversations about everything and nothing. He imagined the loneliness finally lifting from my shoulders. Of course, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Of course you can move in, this is your home too. Always has been. Always will be. He had just opened the front door to my own destruction. The invasion began exactly 2 weeks later. Emily and Derek arrived with 3 massive moving vans and what felt like an entire department store's worth of expensive furniture. He stood on my front porch, watching them unload designer sofas, glass coffee tables, and massive flat-screen televisions. My modest, comfortable home was being transformed into something entirely different. Something cold and impersonal. Derek directed the movers with the authority of a general commanding an army. He pointed at rooms, gestured at walls, and made decisions without consulting me even once. He treated my home as if it were already his. The casual arrogance of his movements made my stomach churn with unease. Dad, we need to use the formal dining room for Derek's home office, Emily announced as she walked past me. It was not a request. It was a statement of fact. He needs a quiet space to make business calls and video conferences. The dining room has the best natural light for his Zoom meetings. The dining room is where your mother and I hosted every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter for 30 years, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That room holds so many memories. We will still have holidays. Emily chirped, already directing movers toward the room. We will just eat in the kitchen instead. It is cozier anyway. More intimate. You will barely notice the difference. He watched them dismantle my memories with surgical precision. The antique china cabinet I had built with my own hands was shoved unceremoniously into a corner of the garage. The beautiful mahogany table where Margaret and I had shared countless meals was pushed against the wall and covered with boxes of Derek's business equipment. The crystal chandelier that had hung above us for decades was replaced with harsh fluorescent lighting. But the worst was yet to come. You cannot sleep in the master bedroom anymore, Dad, Emily told me 1 week later. She was standing in the doorway of the room I had shared with Margaret for 30 beautiful years. Her arms were crossed defensively across her chest. Her eyes refused to meet mine. He felt my heart drop into my stomach. What do you mean? This is my bedroom. This is where I have slept for 3 decades. Derek's parents are visiting from Florida next month, Emily continued, her tone suddenly sharp and impatient. They need a comfortable place to stay, and the master bedroom has the best view of the garden. It also has the largest closet and the attached bathroom. They are elderly. They need easy access to everything. I am elderly too, I pointed out, my voice shaking with disbelief. I am 68 years old. I have arthritis in my knees. You need easy access to everything as well. You are not that old, Dad, Emily said dismissively. You are still healthy and independent. You do not need the master bedroom. We have already set up the guest room in the basement for you. It is quiet and private down there. You will love it. No noise from the street. No distractions. The guest room was a damp, windowless box with a twin bed and a broken lamp. The walls were cold concrete covered in peeling paint. The carpet smelled of mildew and dust. The single light bulb flickered whenever anyone walked across the floor above. I was being slowly pushed into the shadows of my own existence. When I tried to protest, Derek appeared in the hallway behind Emily. His arms were crossed over his broad chest. His cold eyes narrowed with barely concealed contempt. It was a tall, imposing man with a cruel smirk that never quite reached his eyes. Robert, we are trying to help you, Derek said, his voice dripping with false concern. You are not getting any younger. Living in the basement is actually safer for someone your age. There are no stairs to climb. No risk of falling. You will be much more comfortable down there. I am perfectly healthy, I argued, my voice rising with frustration. I walk 2 miles every single morning without any trouble. I have never fallen. I have never been injured. Your memory is slipping, Robert, Derek said smoothly, stepping closer to me. You have been forgetting things lately. We have noticed. You left the stove on yesterday. You forgot where you put your reading glasses. You could not remember your own granddaughter's birthday last week. He stared at him in complete disbelief. He had left the stove on for exactly 2 minutes while answering the phone. He had misplaced my reading glasses for an hour. He had forgotten one birthday out of dozens. These were not signs of dementia. These were normal human mistakes. But I saw the look in Emily's eyes, the way she nodded along with her husband's lies. I saw the way she refused to meet my gaze. She was already building the narrative of my decline. She was already preparing the world to believe that I was losing my mind. Fine, I said quietly, defeated. Fine. He will move to the basement. He had just surrendered the last piece of my dignity. The days in the basement were long and cold. He spent most of my time in the dark, damp room, staring at the ceiling and listening to the footsteps above me. Emily and Derek moved through my house with the confidence of owners. They rearranged my furniture. They painted my walls. They threw away my belongings without asking. One afternoon, I heard a loud crash from the backyard. He climbed the basement stairs and peeked through the kitchen window. Derek was standing in the garden with a sledgehammer. He was smashing Margaret's beloved stone birdbath into pieces. The beautiful granite birdbath she had bought from a local artisan on our 25th wedding anniversary was being reduced to rubble. What are you doing? I shouted, running outside. Derek looked up, his face flushed with exertion. He did not stop swinging the hammer. This thing is an eyesore. It is blocking the view of the new patio we are installing. We are putting in a hot tub next week. This birdbath was Margaret's favorite thing in the entire garden, I said, my voice cracking. She loved watching the birds come to drink. You cannot destroy it. It is just a piece of stone, Robert, Derek said dismissively, swinging the hammer again. Get over it. I stood there, frozen in shock, watching the last piece of my wife's garden being demolished. The tears streamed down my cheeks, But Derek did not even look at me. He did not care about my grief. He did not care about my memories. He only cared about his hot tub. The first sign of something truly wrong came 3 months later. He had gone upstairs to the kitchen to make myself a cup of tea. Emily was standing at the counter, her back to me, speaking in a low, urgent voice on her phone. She did not hear me enter the room. "Jess, I understand," she whispered. "We will have the money next week." Derek found a way to access Robert's accounts. He has been watching the mail for the bank statements. We just need a little more time. He froze in my tracks. My heart began to pound violently in my chest. He stepped backward, careful not to make a sound, and retreated down the basement stairs. My hands were shaking as I closed the door behind me. They were stealing from me. My young daughter and her husband were stealing from me. He sat down on the edge of my bed and tried to breathe. I had worked in banking for 35 years. He knew how these schemes worked. He knew the warning signs. He knew what I needed to do. He needed to become invisible. He needed to watch. He needed to gather evidence. The next morning, I began my investigation. He waited until Emily and Derek left for a breakfast meeting. The moment their car pulled out of the driveway, I climbed the basement stairs and moved through the house like a ghost. He knew exactly where Derek kept his important documents. He had taken over my home office, but he was not smart enough to secure his files properly. I found the hidden safe in the back of the closet. It was a cheap model with a simple combination lock. He watched Derek open it 3 times. He memorized the code. He opened the heavy steel door and found exactly what I expected. Inside the safe were stacks of bank statements. My bank statements. They had been intercepting my mail for months. There were also forged documents. A power of attorney with my signature. Loan applications with my name. Medical records that claimed I was suffering from dementia. My hands trembled as I read through the documents. Derek had forged my signature on a power of attorney form. He had named himself and Emily as my legal guardians. He had applied for a home equity line of credit on my house. The amount was staggering. $1.2 million. They were going to steal everything I had worked for my entire life. My house. My savings. My pension. My dignity. Everything. But the worst document was still waiting for me. Deep in the back of the safe, hidden beneath a pile of invoices, was a brochure. It was a glossy, professional-looking pamphlet for a long-term care facility. A psychiatric hospital specializing in elderly patients with severe dementia. I read the brochure with growing horror. The facility was located in a remote part of New York State. It was locked. It was secure. Patients were not allowed to leave without the approval of their legal guardians. If I was committed to that place, I would never see the outside world again. I would die there, alone and forgotten. I carefully photographed every single document with my smartphone. I replaced everything exactly where I had found it. I locked the safe and retreated back to the basement. I had the evidence. Now I needed a plan. I waited 3 more weeks. I played my role perfectly. I acted confused. I asked the same questions twice. I pretended to forget where I put my keys. Every time I performed my pathetic act, I saw the smug satisfaction on Derek's face. He thought he had broken me. He thought I was already a senile old man. On a Tuesday afternoon, I told Emily I was going for a walk. He put on my coat and walked out the front door. But instead of heading toward the park, I flagged down a taxi and gave the driver the address of my lawyer's office. Arthur Jenkins had been my attorney for 20 years. He was a sharp, silver-haired man with piercing blue eyes and a ruthless reputation. He had represented me through countless business deals and personal matters. He was the only person I trusted completely. I sat down in his office and laid out the entire story. He showed him the photographs on my phone. He told him about the basement, the stolen mail, the forged documents, and the psychiatric facility brochure. Arthur listened without interrupting. When I finished speaking, he leaned back in his leather chair and let out a long, slow breath. "Robert," he said quietly, "these people are not just stealing from you. They are actively planning to destroy you. To erase you from your own life. If they succeed in committing you to that facility, you will never be able to fight back. You will never be able to speak to a lawyer again. You will be completely at their mercy." "I know," I said, my voice steady. "That is why I am here. I need your help to stop them." Arthur nodded slowly. "I can help you. But you need to understand the risks. If we move too quickly, they will know we are onto them. They will panic and accelerate their timeline. They might commit you before we can stop them. Then what do we do?" "We play their game," Arthur said, a cold smile spreading across his face. "We let them think they are winning. We let them believe you are completely broken. And then, when they least expect it, we strike." The plan took shape over the next 2 weeks. Arthur helped me open a new bank account at a different institution. He helped me freeze my credit. He helped me contact the police and file a confidential report. He helped me hire a private investigator to track Derek's financial dealings. The private investigator was a former FBI agent named Marcus Webb. He was a quiet, unassuming man with sharp eyes and a photographic memory. He watched Derek's every move. He tracked his financial transactions. He photographed his meetings. What Marcus discovered was even worse than I had imagined. Derek was not just a failed businessman. He was a gambler. A compulsive gambler. He had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in online casinos and cryptocurrency scams. He was drowning in debt. He owed money to dangerous people. Loan sharks. Criminal organizations. Desperate people who would do anything to collect their money. The home equity line of credit was not just a plan. It was Derek's only chance to survive. If he did not get the money, he would be killed. He was literally fighting for his life. And he was willing to destroy me to save himself. The trap was finally set on Christmas Eve. I knew Derek and Emily were planning to commit me to the psychiatric facility on December 27th. I knew they were going to use the forged power of attorney to have me forcibly removed from my own home. I knew they would lie to the doctors, tell them I was violent and delusional, and have me drugged into submission. But I was ready for them. The morning of Christmas Eve, I dressed in my finest suit. I had not worn it in years. The navy blue wool still fit perfectly. I put on my best tie, polished my shoes, and combed my hair. I looked like the man I used to be. The man they had tried to erase. He walked up the basement stairs and entered the kitchen. Emily was preparing Christmas dinner. Derek was making phone calls in the dining room. They both froze when they saw me. "Robert," Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. "What are you doing up here?" You look different." "I am going out," I said calmly. "I have an appointment." "An appointment?" Derek appeared in the doorway, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "What kind of appointment?" "You did not tell us about any appointment." "I am meeting with my lawyer," I said, watching their faces pale. "Arthur Jenkins. You remember him, don't you? He has been my attorney for 20 years. He wanted to discuss my estate plans with him. There are some changes I need to make." Derek's face went completely white. His hands began to tremble. "You cannot do that. You are not mentally competent to make decisions about your estate. We have the power of attorney. We are in charge of everything." He smiled a cold, hard smile. "That is interesting," I said calmly. "Because my lawyer has some questions about that power of attorney. He does not think my signature looks quite right. He has already contacted the notary public who supposedly witnessed the document. The notary claims she has never met me. She claims she never signed anything with my name." Derek staggered backward, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Emily started to cry. "You see," I continued, walking toward the front door, "I have been in banking for 35 years. I know fraud when I see it. I know forged signatures. I know deception. And I have been watching you both for months. I have been gathering evidence. I have photographed everything. Every document. Every transaction. Every lie. Dad, please," Emily sobbed. "We did not mean to hurt you. We were desperate. We had no choice." "There is always a choice," I said softly. "You chose to steal from me. You chose to lie to me. You chose to plan to commit me to a psychiatric hospital and throw away the key. That was your choice. And now you will face the consequences." He opened the front door. Standing on the porch were Arthur Jenkins and 2 police officers. Behind them, in the street, were 3 patrol cars with flashing lights. The entire neighborhood was watching. "Happy Christmas," I said quietly. "Enjoy your last day of freedom." The arrest was swift and brutal. The officers handcuffed Derek in front of his parents, who had arrived for the holiday dinner. They arrested Emily as well, despite her tears and protests. They read them their rights. They led them out of my house in handcuffs. The charges were numerous. Forgery. Fraud. Identity theft. Elder abuse. Conspiracy to commit a felony. The list went on and on. Derek would face decades in federal prison. Emily would face years as well. He watched them being shoved into the back of police cruisers. He watched the car doors slam shut. He watched the flashing lights disappear down the street. The snow continued to fall, covering the footprints of my betrayers. I stood in my doorway, breathing in the cold, clean air. The nightmare was finally over. My house was mine again. My life was mine again. My dignity was intact. He walked back inside and closed the door behind me. The silence was no longer lonely. It was peaceful. It was mine. He had survived the worst betrayal imaginable. He had stood up for myself. He had protected my legacy. And I had taught them a lesson they would never forget. Blood does not give anyone a free pass to commit abuse, exploit your hard work, or strip away your dignity. We are taught to sacrifice everything for our children. But true love sometimes means having the iron will to say no. When you allow disrespect to grow under the guise of family peace, you only breed monsters. Protect your legacy. Guard your heart. And never forget that you owe nothing to those who view you as a disposable resource. Your final years are meant for peace, not for paying the debts of ungrateful people. Stand firm. Take absolute control. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced a deep betrayal from those you trusted the most? Let me know which city you are watching from. See you all next time. The flashing red and blue lights faded into the distance, swallowed by the thick falling snow. He stood in the doorway of my home, watching the last traces of the police cruisers disappear around the corner. The cold wind bit at my face, but I did not move. He needed to feel the cold. He needed to feel something real after months of living inside a nightmare. The silence that settled over the neighborhood was profound, broken only by the soft whisper of snowflakes landing on the frozen ground. He closed the heavy oak door and leaned my back against it, letting out a breath I did not realize I had been holding for months. My hands were still trembling, but not from fear. They were trembling from the sheer relief of finally being free. He walked slowly through the empty rooms of my house, my footsteps echoing against the hardwood floors. The Christmas decorations Emily had so carefully arranged were still standing. The artificial tree in the corner was still twinkling with colorful lights. The stockings were still hung by the fireplace with care. But the house felt different now. The oppressive weight of their presence was gone. The suffocating tension that had filled every room had evaporated into the cold winter air. He walked into the dining room and looked at the long mahogany table where Derek had sat like a king, issuing commands and making plans to destroy me. The table was still covered with the remnants of the holiday dinner they had been preparing. Plates of half-chopped vegetables. A turkey waiting to be roasted. Bottles of expensive wine that Derek had purchased with my money. I picked up one of the wine bottles and read the label. It was a vintage Bordeaux worth over $300. He had been celebrating his victory before the battle was even won. He carried the bottle to the kitchen and poured myself a generous glass. He deserved this. He had earned this. He walked back to the living room and settled into my favorite leather armchair, the same chair I had sat in on that warm September evening when Emily had called with her carefully crafted lies. The irony was not lost on me. He had been sitting in this exact spot when the nightmare began. Now I was sitting in this exact spot as the nightmare finally ended. He took a long sip of the wine and let the warmth spread through my chest. The fire in the fireplace crackled and popped, casting dancing shadows across the walls. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. But the peace would not last long. The very next morning, my phone began to ring. It was Arthur Jenkins, my attorney. His voice was grave, carrying a weight that immediately put me on edge. "Robert, we have a problem. Derek made bail. He was released last night on a substantial bond. His parents posted the money." I felt the wine glass slip from my fingers. It hit the hardwood floor and shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. The red liquid spread across the wood like fresh blood. How is that possible? The charges were so severe. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge set bail at $200,000, Arthur explained, his tone grim. Derek's parents liquidated their retirement accounts. They sold their car. They did whatever it took to get him out. He is free right now. And Robert, I need you to understand something. Desperate people do desperate things. Derek has nothing left to lose. He lost his freedom. He lost his reputation. He lost his marriage. Emily is still in custody, by the way. She did not make bail. But Derek is out, and he is angry. He is dangerous. He sat in stunned silence, staring at the broken glass on the floor. The nightmare was not over. It was just beginning a new chapter. What do I do? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You need to be careful, Arthur said firmly. You need to stay vigilant. Derek is going to try something. He is going to come after you. He has no money, no future, and no hope. He has nothing to lose. That makes him incredibly unpredictable. I am going to contact the police and file a restraining order. He will also have an officer posted near your home for the next few days. But Robert, you need to be prepared. You need to protect yourself. He hung up the phone and looked around my beautiful home. The walls that had once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a cage. The windows that had once offered views of my peaceful garden now felt like vulnerable entry points. Derek was out there somewhere, and he was coming for me. He spent the rest of the day securing my home. He called a locksmith and had all the locks replaced. He installed motion-activated floodlights around the perimeter of the property. He purchased a security camera system and set it up in every room. He was not going to be caught off guard again. He had survived his first attack, and I would survive his second. The first night after his release was the longest night of my life. He barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the windows, every distant car engine made my heart race. He lay in my bed, which I had finally moved back to the master bedroom, clutching a heavy metal flashlight like a weapon. He had never been a violent man. He had never even been in a physical fight. But I knew that if Derek came through that door, I would do whatever it took to defend myself. The hours crawled by in agonizing slowness. The clock on my nightstand ticked past midnight, then 1, then 2. The house remained silent. The security cameras showed nothing but empty rooms and falling snow. By the time the first rays of dawn began to creep through the curtains, I had convinced myself that Arthur had been wrong. Derek would not come. He was too smart for that. He knew the police were watching. He knew the restraining order would put him back in jail. He would wait. He would plan. He would strike when I least expected it. He was right. He was waiting. He was planning. But he was not waiting for me. He was waiting for something else entirely. 3 days passed without incident. He began to relax slightly. He resumed my morning walks, though I stayed close to home. He went to the grocery store. I visited Arthur's office to sign some paperwork. Life was slowly returning to normal. Then, on the 4th morning, I received a letter. It was delivered by hand, slipped under my front door sometime during the night. He found it when I came downstairs to make my morning coffee. The envelope was plain white, with no return address. My name was written on the front in block letters, as if the writer was trying to disguise their handwriting. He opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The message was short, chilling, and devastating. I know what you did. You took everything from me. Now I will take everything from you. He will not stop until you have nothing left. Watch your back. Watch your home. Watch everyone you love. I am coming for you, and when I find you, you will beg for mercy. I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking more violently with each reading. The words were not just a threat. They were a promise. Derek had officially declared war. He immediately called Arthur. He told me to contact the police, which I did. The officer who arrived was sympathetic but helpless. He filed a report, took the letter as evidence, and assured me that they would increase patrols in my neighborhood. But I could see it in his eyes. He did not think Derek would actually do anything. He thought it was just empty words from a desperate man. He knew better. He had seen the darkness in Derek's eyes. He had seen the lengths he was willing to go to get what he wanted. It would not stop until he had destroyed me. The next few weeks were a blur of anxiety and vigilance. He barely left my house. He slept with one eye open. He checked the locks obsessively. He reviewed the security camera footage every morning, looking for any sign of intrusion. But Derek remained invisible. It was like a ghost, haunting the edges of my life without ever showing his face. He began to wonder if I was losing my mind. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the letter was just a pathetic attempt to scare me. Maybe Derek had already fled the state, or the country. Maybe I would never see him again. He was wrong. It happened on a Tuesday night, exactly 3 weeks after the letter arrived. He had just finished dinner and was settling into my armchair to read a book. The house was quiet. The snow had finally stopped falling, and the moon was shining brightly through the windows, casting silver light across the living room floor. He was just starting to relax when I heard it. A sound. Soft at first, almost imperceptible. A crack. Coming from the back of the house. He froze, my book slipping from my hands. He listened intently, straining to hear over the pounding of my own heart. There it was again. A crack. Followed by the soft sound of footsteps. Someone was in my house. He grabbed the heavy flashlight from the end table and crept toward the hallway. He moved as quietly as I could, but my joints betrayed me with every step. The footsteps grew louder. They were coming from the kitchen. I pressed myself against the wall and peered around the corner. What I saw made my blood run cold. Derek was standing in the middle of my kitchen, bathed in the pale moonlight streaming through the window. He was holding a knife. A large, sharp kitchen knife that I recognized as my own. His eyes were wild, darting around the room like a trapped animal. He was muttering to himself, his words barely audible. He took everything from me. Everything. My business. My wife. My freedom. He took it all. He will make him pay. He will make him suffer. He knew I had to act. He could not just stand there and wait for him to find me. He could not call the police. There was no time. He had to confront him directly. He stepped out from behind the wall, my flashlight raised like a weapon. Derek, stop. Put the knife down. The police are already on their way. They like him easily, but Derek did not believe it. He turned slowly, his eyes locking onto mine. The expression on his face was terrifying. It was not anger. It was not hatred. It was something far worse. It was emptiness. The complete absence of any human emotion. "Hello, Robert," he said calmly, his voice eerily steady. "I was wondering when you would come out. He was starting to think you had abandoned your own home." He took a step backward, keeping my eyes fixed on the knife. "You need to leave, Derek. This is not going to end well for you. The police are coming. You will go back to jail. This time, you will not make bail." Derek laughed. A cold, hollow sound that echoed off the kitchen walls. "You think I care about jail? Do you think I care about anything anymore? You have already taken everything from me. Everything that mattered. My wife. My future. My dignity. There is nothing left to lose. But you, Robert, you still have plenty to lose. You have this beautiful house. You have your freedom. You have your precious memories. I am going to take all of that away from you, piece by piece. Starting tonight." He lunged toward me with terrifying speed. I swung the flashlight with all my strength, catching him across the side of the head. He stumbled but did not fall. The knife clattered to the floor. He dug for it, my fingers closing around the cold steel handle just as Derek recovered. He grabbed my wrist, his grip painfully strong, and tried to twist the knife out of my hand. We struggled in the darkness, two desperate men fighting for survival. He was older. Weaker. My body ached with every movement. But I was fighting for my life. He was fighting for everything Derek had tried to take from me. And I was not going to lose. I kneed him in the groin with all the force I could muster. He doubled over, gasping for breath. He scrambled backward, the knife still in my hand. He pointed it at him, my voice shaking but firm. "Get out of my house. Now. He will not warn you again." Derek stared at me, his eyes burning with hatred. Slowly, painfully, he pulled himself upright. He wiped the blood from his lip and smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "This is not over, Robert. You know that. He will never stop. He will never give up. Every day, for the rest of your life, you will look over your shoulder. You will wonder if I am coming. And one day, when you least expect it, I will be there." He turned and walked toward the back door. He did not run. He walked slowly, deliberately, as if he had all the time in the world. He opened the door and stepped out into the night. He stood in the kitchen, the knife still clutched in my trembling hand, watching him disappear into the darkness. He did not sleep that night. He sat in my armchair, the knife on my lap, watching the security cameras until the first rays of dawn began to creep through the windows. The police arrived an hour later. Arthur had called them when I failed to answer his morning check-in call. They searched the house and the surrounding property, but Derek was long gone. They took my statement, collected the knife as evidence, and assured me that they would find him. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Derek remained a ghost, haunting the edges of my life without ever showing his face. But I refused to live in fear. I refused to let him win. I installed additional security measures. I bought a guard dog. I started taking self-defense classes. I was not going to be a victim anymore. I was going to be a survivor. The months that followed Derek's attack were a constant battle between fear and determination. I refused to let him dictate how I lived my life, but I could not ignore the threat he represented. Every shadow seemed to hide his silhouette. Every creak of the floorboards made my heart race. Every unfamiliar car that passed my house sent a chill down my spine. I was living in a state of permanent vigilance, and it was exhausting. But I knew I could not give up. I could not let him win. He had fought too hard to reclaim my life, and I was not going to let him take it away again. The police searched for Derek for weeks. They tracked his phone, monitored his bank accounts, and questioned everyone who knew him. But he had vanished completely. No one had seen him. No one had heard from him. It was as if he had simply disappeared from the face of the earth. He knew better. It was out there somewhere, waiting. Beating his time. Planning his next move. He could feel it in my bones. The storm was coming, and I needed to be ready. One evening, about 4 months after the attack, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Emily. She had been released from custody on her own recognizance, pending trial. She looked terrible. Her eyes were hollow. Her face was gaunt. She had lost weight, and the vibrant woman I once knew seemed to have been replaced by a hollow shell. She stood on my front porch, shivering in the cold, her hands shoved deep into the pockets of her thin coat. "Dad, please," she said, her voice cracking. "I know you have every right to hate me. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. But I need to talk to you. Please. Just give me 5 minutes." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to close the door and walk away. This woman had conspired to destroy me. She had stolen from me, lied to me, and planned to commit me to a psychiatric facility. She had chosen her husband over her own father. But she was still my daughter. Despite everything, I could not completely shut her out. "Fine," I said, stepping aside. 5 minutes. Come in. She walked into the living room, her eyes darting nervously around the space. She looked at the furniture, the paintings, the photographs on the mantel. She looked at the empty space where her mother's portrait used to hang. He had moved it to my bedroom after they moved in. I did not want them to desecrate her memory. "The house looks different," she said quietly. "It looks cleaner. More peaceful." "It feels different too," I replied. "Now that the parasites are gone." She flinched at the word, but she did not argue. She sat down on the edge of the sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. He sat across from her in my armchair, keeping a careful distance. "What do you want, Emily?" "I want to apologize," she said, her voice trembling. "I know it does not mean anything now. I know I can never undo what I did. But I need you to know that I am sorry. I am so sorry. I was blind. I was stupid. I let Derek manipulate me. It convinced me that we were doing the right thing. It told me you were losing your mind. It told me we were protecting you from yourself. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. He wanted to believe that we were not the bad guys. Emily, I was not losing my mind, I said flatly. I was grieving. He was lonely. He was vulnerable. And instead of helping me, you exploited me. You stole from me. You planned to lock me away in a psychiatric hospital and throw away the key. That was not a mistake. That was a choice. A series of choices. And you made every single one of them. I know, she sobbed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I know what I did. And I hate myself for it. Every single day, I hate myself. I have lost everything. Derek is gone. My freedom is gone. My reputation is gone. I have nothing left except this. This chance to tell you that I am sorry. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Anger. Sadness. Grief. And something else. A tiny spark of pity. She had been broken by Derek just as surely as he had tried to break me. She was his victim too, in her own way. She had allowed herself to be manipulated, but she had also made her own choices. And now she was paying the price. Emily, I cannot forgive you, I said softly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The wounds are too deep. The betrayal is too profound. You were my daughter. My only child. I trusted you with everything I had. And you threw it all away. I do not know if I will ever be able to look at you without seeing the person who tried to destroy me. I understand, she whispered, wiping her eyes. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry. I wanted you to know that I love you. Even after everything, I still love you, Dad. I always have. She stood up and walked toward the door. She paused with her hand on the doorknob, looking back at me one last time. Be careful, Dad. Derek is not going to stop. He is obsessed with you. He blames you for everything that went wrong in his life. He will not rest until he has destroyed you. I do not know where he is. He has not contacted me. But I know he is out there, and I know he is planning something. Please, Dad. Please be careful. She walked out into the cold night, and I watched her go. He did not call after her. He did not rush to the door. He simply sat in my armchair and stared at the empty space where she had been standing. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to believe that she truly regretted what she had done. But another part of me, the part that had been burned too many times, knew that I could never fully trust her again. She had broken something between us that could never be fully repaired. The weeks that followed were quiet. So quiet. I continued my daily routines, but I could not shake the feeling that something was coming. Derek had been silent for too long. He was planning something. He knew it. He could feel it. And I was right. It happened on a freezing night in February. The wind was howling outside, rattling the windows and shaking the walls. He was sitting in my armchair, reading a book, when the power suddenly went out. The house plunged into complete darkness. He heard a crash from the back of the house. Glass shattering. Someone was breaking in. He grabbed my flashlight and my phone, but the phone was dead. No signal. No power. He was completely cut off from the outside world. He crept through the dark house, my heart pounding in my chest. The sounds were coming from the kitchen. He could hear heavy footsteps. Furniture being overturned. Glass breaking. "Derek, I know it is you," I called out, my voice echoing through the empty rooms. "There is no point hiding. I know you are here." "What do you want?" A laugh echoed from the darkness. Cold. Hollow. Familiar. "What do I want?" Derek's voice rang out, dripping with venom. "I want everything you took from me. I want my life back. I want my wife back. I want my freedom back. But since I cannot have any of that, I will settle for watching you suffer." He stepped out of the shadows, a crowbar clutched in his hands. His face was twisted into a mask of pure hatred. He looked thinner than before. Gaunt. Feral. Like a man who had been surviving on nothing but rage. "This ends tonight, Robert. One way or another. I am going to destroy everything you love, and then I am going to destroy you." I raised my flashlight, pointing it directly at his face. "You are not going to do anything, Derek. You are going to walk out that door, and you are going to leave me alone forever. Or I am going to call the police and have you thrown back in jail where you belong." "Call them," he said, a wide smile spreading across his face. "The phone lines are cut. The power is out. There is no one coming to save you this time. It is just you and me, old man. And I have been waiting for this moment for a very long time." He lunged forward, swinging the crowbar. He dove out of the way, the metal bar smashing into the wall where I had been standing just moments before. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing a heavy cast iron skillet from the counter. It was not much of a weapon, but it was all I had. We circled each other in the darkness, two men locked in a fight for survival. Derek swung again, the crowbar whistling past my head. He swung the skillet, catching him across the shoulder. He stumbled backward, howling in pain. But he did not stop. He came at me again, faster this time, more desperate. He blocked the crowbar with the skillet, the impact jarring my arms all the way up to my shoulders. We were locked together, pushing against each other with all our strength. He was younger. Stronger. But I had something he did not. He had a reason to survive. He had nothing left. He pushed him backward, sending him crashing into the refrigerator. He fell to the ground, the crowbar clattering out of his hands. He was on him in an instant, pinning him down with my knee. "It is over, Derek," I said, my voice gasping for breath. "You lost. You lost the moment you stepped into my house." He laughed. A broken, insane laugh. "You think this is over? This will never be over. He will always be here. He will always be in your nightmares. You will never be free of me. Never." He heard sirens in the distance. The police had arrived. He had managed to press the panic button on my security system before the power went out. They were coming to save me. Derek heard them too. His smile faded, replaced by a look of pure defeat. The police burst through the front door, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They pulled me off Derek and arrested him. Destime, there would be no bail. Destime, he would stay in jail until his trial. Destime, I would finally be free. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, watching the officers lead Derek away. His eyes met mine as they passed. There was no hatred there anymore. No anger. Just emptiness. I had finally lost everything. And I had finally won. It had been a long, brutal fight, but I had survived. He had protected my legacy. He had protected my home. He had protected myself. And now, at last, I could finally rest. The trial was swift and brutal. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence against Derek. They forged documents. They intercepted mail. They planned commitment to the psychiatric facility. The attack on my home. The threatening letters. It was overwhelming, and the jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Derek was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. He would be an old man by the time he was released, if he was ever released at all. His parents sat in the back of the courtroom, their faces pale and hollow. They had spent their life savings to bail him out, only to watch him throw it all away. They did not look at me as they left the courtroom. They could not bear to face the man their son had tried to destroy. Emily's trial was separate. She had cooperated with the prosecution, providing testimony against Derek in exchange for a reduced sentence. She was sentenced to 5 years probation, with mandatory counseling and community service. She would not go to prison, but she would carry the weight of her actions for the rest of her life. He attended both trials. He sat in the front row, my back straight, my eyes fixed on the proceedings. He wanted to see justice served. He wanted to see the people who had tried to destroy me face the consequences of their actions. And I did. It was a bittersweet victory. He had won, but the cost had been enormous. He had lost my daughter. He had lost my trust in the people I loved most. He had lost years of my life to fear and anxiety. But I had also gained something invaluable. He had gained my freedom. He had gained my dignity. He had gained the knowledge that I was stronger than I ever imagined. The months that followed were a period of healing and rebuilding. He slowly began to reclaim my life. He started hosting small gatherings at my home again. Old friends. Neighbors. People who had stood by me during the darkest days. He reconnected with the community I had isolated myself from. I started volunteering at a local senior center, helping other elderly people navigate the challenges of aging. He found purpose again. He found joy again. But the scars remained. He still checked the locks obsessively. He still jumped at unexpected sounds. He still woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, haunted by nightmares of Derek's face. The trauma of what I had experienced would never fully leave me. But I learned to live with it. He learned to accept it as part of who I had become. One afternoon, about a year after the trial, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Emily. She had been in counseling for months, trying to rebuild her life. She had gotten a job at a small accounting firm. She had started attending church. She was trying to become a better person. The letter was full of apologies and regrets. She wrote about how much she missed me. How much she wished she could undo the past. How much she hoped that one day, I might find it in my heart to forgive her. I read the letter 3 times, my eyes lingering on every word. I felt the familiar ache of grief and anger rise in my chest. But I also felt something else. Something I had not felt in a long time. Hope. He set the letter down and walked to the window. The garden was in full bloom. The flowers Margaret had planted years ago were thriving, their colors bright and vibrant against the green grass. The stone birdbath I had replaced after Derek destroyed the original was now home to a family of robins. Life was moving forward. It was time for me to move forward too. He picked up my phone and called Emily. She answered on the first ring. Dad. Her voice was trembling. Is that really you? Yes, Emily, I said softly. It is me. He got your letter. He want to see you. She came to the house the next day. She looked different. Healthier. More at peace. She had cut her hair short and was wearing simple, practical clothes. The expensive designer labels were gone. The mask of perfection was gone. She was just Emily. My daughter. Thank you for seeing me, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I know I do not deserve this. You are right, I said. You do not deserve it. But I am giving it to you anyway. Not because you have earned it. But because I am tired of carrying this anger. I am tired of letting the past control my future. You are still my daughter. And despite everything, I still love you. She broke down in tears, collapsing into my arms. He held her, feeling the weight of years of pain and regret finally beginning to lift. It would not be easy. There would be difficult conversations. There would be setbacks. There would be moments when the old wounds would reopen. But we would face them together. We would heal together. We would rebuild our relationship slowly, carefully, one step at a time. The years that followed were not perfect, but they were peaceful. Emily remained in counseling and continued to rebuild her life. She eventually remarried, this time to a kind, gentleman who treated her with the respect she deserved. She had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and she made sure they knew their grandfather. He watched them grow up, watching them play in the same garden where their grandmother had tended her flowers. The circle of life continued. The pain of the past faded, replaced by the joy of the present. I lived to be 93 years old. I spent my final years surrounded by family and friends, loved and respected by everyone who knew me. He passed away peacefully in my sleep, in the home I had fought so hard to protect. The legacy I built was not just the house or the money or the memories. It was the lesson I had learned. The lesson that blood does not give anyone a free pass to commit abuse or exploit your hard work or strip away your dignity. The lesson that true love sometimes means having the iron will to say no. The lesson that when you allow disrespect to grow under the guise of family peace, you only breed monsters. Protect your legacy. Guard your heart. Never forget that you owe nothing to those who view you as a disposable resource. Your final years are meant for peace, not for paying the debts of ungrateful people. Stand firm. Take absolute control. And always remember. The master engineer remained standing tall, fully ready to enjoy the quiet, undisturbed peace of his newly secured, unshakable kingdom. The sun was setting over the garden, casting long golden shadows across the manicured lawn. He sat in my favorite spot on the patio, a cup of tea warming my hands, watching the birds gather around the stone birdbath I had replaced years ago. The robins were back, as they always were this time of year, their cheerful songs filling the evening air with a sense of peace and continuity. It had been 5 years since the trial. 5 years since Derek had been sent to prison. 5 years since Emily had begun the long, painful process of rebuilding her life. 5 years since I had finally reclaimed my home, my dignity, and my freedom. The scars were still there, hidden beneath the surface, but they had faded with time. The nightmares had stopped. The constant vigilance had eased. I could finally breathe without feeling the weight of fear pressing down on my chest. I thought about Margaret often. She would have been proud of me. She would have been proud of the way I had fought to protect our home, our legacy, our family. She would have been proud of the way I had stood up to Derek, refusing to let him destroy everything we had built together. She would have been proud of the way I had forgiven Emily, giving her a second chance even when she did not deserve it. I could almost hear her voice, soft and warm, telling me that I had done the right thing. That love was always worth fighting for. That family was always worth saving. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I set down my tea and walked through the house to answer it. Standing on the front porch was Emily, her 2 children in tow. The little boy, James, was 6 years old, with his mother's bright eyes and his father's easy smile. His sister, Sarah, was 4, a tiny whirlwind of energy and curiosity. They ran past me into the house, their laughter echoing off the walls. "Grandpa, Grandpa, look what we brought you!" James shouted, holding up a drawing. It was a colorful crayon depiction of our house, complete with a stick figure standing in the garden. He recognized the figure instantly. It was me. "That is beautiful, James," I said, ruffling his hair. "Is that Grandpa in the garden?" "Yes," he exclaimed. "I drew you with the birdies. Mommy said you like to watch the birdies." "I do," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I love to watch the birdies." "Thank you, James. This is the best present I have ever received." Sarah tugged at my sleeve, demanding my attention. "Grandpa, Grandpa, can we go see the birdies now?" "Can we?" I laughed, the sound feeling light and free. "Of course, sweetheart. Let us go see the birdies." He took their hands and led them through the house to the back patio. Emily followed behind, a soft smile on her face. She had changed so much over the past 5 years. The hollow, desperate woman who had stood in my living room begging for forgiveness was gone. In her place was a strong, confident mother who had learned from her mistakes and was determined to do better. She was still in counseling, working through the guilt and shame of what she had done. But she was healing. Slowly, painfully, she was healing. We spent the afternoon in the garden. The children ran through the grass, their laughter filling the air. He showed them the flowers Margaret had planted, telling them stories about their grandmother, the woman they had never met. They listened with wide eyes, captivated by the tales of a woman who had loved fiercely and lived fully. Emily sat beside me on the patio, watching her children play. "You are good with them," she said softly. "They love you." "I love them too," I replied. "They are the best thing that has happened to me in a long time." She was quiet for a moment, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Dad, I want to thank you. For giving me a second chance. For forgiving me. You know I do not deserve it. You know I hurt you in ways that can never be undone. But I am so grateful that you gave me the opportunity to prove that I can be better. That I can be the daughter you deserve." He reached over and took her hand. "You have already proven it, Emily. You see the woman you have become. You see the mother you are. You see the way you have rebuilt your life, one day at a time. You are not the same person who stood in this house and conspired to destroy me. You have grown. You have changed. And I am proud of you. She began to cry, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. I do not deserve you, Dad. Maybe not, I said gently. But that is not how love works. Love is not about deserving. Love is about choosing to forgive. Choosing to heal. Choosing to move forward. And that is what I am doing. I am choosing to move forward with you. The sun continued to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The children eventually tired, curling up on the patio cushions as the evening chill began to settle. Emily wrapped them in blankets and carried them to the car, promising to return soon. He watched them drive away, the fading light reflecting off the windshield. The house fell silent again, but it was not the oppressive silence of loneliness. It was the peaceful silence of contentment. He walked back inside, closing the door behind me, and looked around at the home I had fought so hard to protect. It was not just a house. It was a sanctuary. A testament to the resilience of the human spirit. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. The weeks that followed were filled with simple joys. Morning walks in the garden. Afternoon tea on the patio. Evening visits from Emily and the children. I began to write my memoirs, documenting the incredible journey of my life. I wrote about my career, my marriage, my family. I wrote about the betrayal and the redemption. I wrote about the lessons I had learned and the wisdom I wanted to pass on. I wanted my grandchildren to know the truth. I wanted them to understand that life was not always easy, but it was always worth fighting for. I wanted them to know that they came from a long line of survivors, people who had faced adversity and emerged stronger on the other side. I also began to speak publicly about my experiences. I gave talks at senior centers, community events, and even local schools. I shared my story with anyone who would listen, hoping to inspire others to stand up for themselves and never give up. The response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life reached out to me, sharing their own stories of betrayal and redemption. I realized that I was not alone. There were countless others who had faced similar struggles, who had been taken advantage of by the people they trusted most. My story gave them hope. It gave them courage. It reminded them that they were not victims. They were survivors. One afternoon, I received a letter from Derek. It was the first time he had contacted me since his trial. The envelope was stamped with the official seal of the federal prison where he was serving his sentence. He hesitated before opening it, my heart pounding with a familiar anxiety. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to pretend it had never arrived. But another part of me, the part that had always believed in facing the truth head-on, knew that I needed to read it. He opened the envelope and pulled out the letter. The handwriting was shaky, unsteady, as if his hands had been trembling as he wrote. Robert, I am writing this letter to apologize. I know it is too little, too late. I know you have every reason to hate me. I know I can never undo the pain I have caused you. But I need you to know that I regret everything. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every moment of cruelty. He was consumed by greed and desperation. He lost sight of what truly mattered. He lost sight of my humanity. I am paying the price for my actions. Every single day. But I want you to know that I am trying to change. I am in therapy. I am taking classes. I am trying to become a better person. I do not expect your forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I am sorry. I am truly, deeply sorry. Derek. I read the letter 3 times, letting the words sink in. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to think that he had truly changed. But another part of me, the part that had been burned too many times, knew that words were cheap. It was easy to apologize from the safety of a prison cell. It was easy to claim regret when there were no consequences. He would need to see action. He would need to see proof. But I was not going to hold on to the anger. He was not going to let him live rent-free in my head. He folded the letter and placed it in the drawer with the other memories I had collected over the years. It was a reminder of what I had survived. A reminder of how far I had come. A reminder that the past could not hurt me anymore. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and new challenges. Emily's children grew up, graduating from school and starting their own lives. James became a teacher, just like his mother had always wanted. Sarah became a nurse, dedicating her life to helping others. They both inherited their grandmother's compassion and their grandfather's determination. He was there for every milestone. Every graduation. Every wedding. Every birth. He watched my family grow and thrive, and I felt a profound sense of pride and gratitude. I also remained active in my community, continuing to share my story and inspire others. He mentored young people, teaching them the importance of financial literacy and the dangers of trusting the wrong people. He volunteered at the local hospital, visiting elderly patients who had no family to care for them. He gave them the companionship they deserved, reminding them that they were not forgotten. It gave me a sense of purpose, a reason to keep going even when my body began to slow down. The arthritis in my knees made it harder to walk. The hearing in my left ear had faded to a dull roar. But my mind remained sharp, and my spirit remained unbroken. He had survived too much to let a few aches and pains slow me down. One evening, I received a phone call that would change everything. It was from the prison where Derek was incarcerated. He had been found dead in his cell that morning. He had suffered a massive heart attack in his sleep. He was only 52 years old. He sat in stunned silence, the phone still pressed to my ear. He did not know how to feel. He did not know what to say. The man who had tried to destroy me was gone. The man who had tormented my dreams for years was finally at peace. He should have felt relief. He should have felt satisfaction. But all I felt was a strange, unexpected sadness. He had been so young. He had wasted his life chasing illusions and destroying himself in the process. He had died alone, in a cold prison cell, with nothing to show for his years on this earth. It was a tragic end to a tragic story. He attended his funeral. He did not go to celebrate his death. He went to pay my respects to the man he could have been, if only he had made different choices. His parents were there, old and frail, their faces etched with grief. They did not speak to me, but they nodded in acknowledgement. They understood that I had come not as an enemy, but as a witness to the tragedy of their son's life. Emily was there too, standing in the back, her face pale and drawn. She had not loved Derek for years. She had moved on, built a new life, found happiness with another man. But she still mourned the loss of the person he could have been. We stood together in the quiet of the cemetery, watching the casket being lowered into the ground. The minister spoke words of comfort, but they felt hollow. There was no comfort to be found in this tragedy. There was only the stark reminder of the fragility of life. The consequences of the choices we make. The legacy we leave behind. I walked back to my car, Emily by my side. She reached out and took my hand. "Are you okay, Dad?" she asked softly. "I do not know," I admitted. I thought I would feel relief. I thought I would feel closure. But all I feel is sadness. Sadness for the life he could have had. Sadness for the pain he caused himself and everyone around him. Sadness for the waste of it all. "I know," she said, squeezing my hand. "I feel the same way. But we cannot change the past. We can only learn from it. And we have. We have learned to be better. To do better. And that is what matters." I drove home in silence, the weight of the day pressing down on me. The house was quiet, as it always was now. I made myself a cup of tea and settled into my armchair, staring at the fire. The flames danced and flickered, casting shadows across the walls. I thought about Derek. I thought about Emily. I thought about Margaret. I thought about all the choices that had led to this moment. The good ones and the bad ones. The ones I regretted and the ones I was proud of. Life was a series of choices, each one building on the last. And at the end of it all, we were defined not by our mistakes, but by how we chose to learn from them. By how we chose to move forward. I reached for the journal I had been writing for years. I opened it to a blank page and began to write. I wrote about Derek's death, and the complex emotions it had stirred. I wrote about Emily and the family we had rebuilt together. I wrote about the legacy I wanted to leave behind. I wrote about the lessons I had learned, the wisdom I had gained, and the hope I held for the future. I wrote until my hand grew tired, and then I closed the journal and set it aside. The fire had burned down to embers, casting a warm glow across the room. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, feeling the peace settle over me like a familiar blanket. The past was behind me. The future was unknown. But I was ready for whatever came next. I had faced the worst and survived. I had rebuilt my life from the ashes. And I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. The final chapter of my story had not yet been written. There were still more experiences to have, more memories to make, more lessons to learn. But I knew, with absolute certainty, that I would face whatever came next with the same determination and courage that had carried me through the darkest days. I was Robert Sullivan. I was a survivor. And my story was far from over. The morning light streamed through the windows, casting warm golden patterns across the hardwood floor. I woke up feeling different. Lighter. As if a weight I had been carrying for years had finally been lifted from my shoulders. The news of Derek's passing had settled into my heart, not as a burden, but as a release. The chapter of my life that had been defined by fear and anger was finally closed. It was time to write a new chapter. A chapter filled with hope, joy, and the simple pleasures of life. I climbed out of bed, my joints protesting slightly, and walked to the window. The garden was in full bloom, a riot of colors that seemed to celebrate the arrival of spring. The birds were singing, their cheerful melodies filling the air with music. It was a perfect day. A day for new beginnings. I dressed slowly, taking my time, savoring the simple act of getting ready. I chose my favorite shirt, the one Margaret had given me for our 40th anniversary. It was old and faded, but it still fit perfectly. I looked at myself in the mirror, studying the face that stared back at me. The wrinkles were deeper now. The hair was thinner. The eyes were tired, but they still held a spark of life. He was not the same man who had stood in this mirror years ago, broken and defeated. He was stronger. Wiser. More at peace with myself and the world. He walked downstairs and made myself a cup of coffee, the familiar ritual grounding me in the present moment. The house was quiet, but it was a comfortable quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are supposed to be. My phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Emily. Good morning, Dad. I hope I did not wake you. Not at all, I replied, smiling. I have been up for a while. Just enjoying the morning. I have some news, she said, her voice bright with excitement. James and Sarah are coming to visit this weekend. They want to bring their families. It will be a full house. That sounds wonderful, I said, my heart swelling with joy. I will start preparing. Actually, Dad, I was hoping you would let us do the preparing. You have done so much for us over the years. It is time we did something for you. We want to throw you a party. A celebration of everything you have accomplished. Everything you have overcome. You deserve it. He was speechless. The gesture was so unexpected, so thoughtful, that it brought tears to my eyes. Emily, that is not necessary. You do not need a party. I know you do not need one, Dad. But we want to give you one. You have spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. It is time we took care of you. Please, let us do this. He could hear the sincerity in her voice, the genuine desire to make me happy. And I realized that I wanted to let her. He wanted to accept the love and gratitude that was being offered to me. He wanted to celebrate the life I had built, the family I had rebuilt, and the future that stretched out before me. All right, I said softly. I would love that. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Emily and her family descended upon the house, filling it with laughter, music, and the delicious aroma of home-cooked food. The children ran through the rooms, their energy infectious. The adults gathered in the kitchen, sharing stories and catching up on each other's lives. I sat in my armchair, watching it all unfold, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. This was what I had fought for. This was what I had survived for. This was the legacy I had built. A family that loved each other, supported each other, and celebrated each other. It was everything I had ever wanted. The party was held on a warm Saturday afternoon. The garden was transformed into a festive wonderland, with colorful banners, twinkling lights, and tables laden with food. Friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate with me. Old colleagues from my banking days. Members of the community center where I volunteered. People whose lives I had touched in ways I had never fully appreciated. They all came to honor me, to thank me, to show me how much I meant to them. He walked through the crowd, shaking hands and accepting hugs, feeling the warmth of their love wash over me. It was overwhelming. It was humbling. It was the most beautiful experience of my life. Emily stood beside me, her hand in mine. Do you remember what you told me, Dad? When I came to you begging for forgiveness? I remember, I said. I told you that love is not about deserving. It is about choosing to forgive. Choosing to heal. choosing to move forward. You were right, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You taught me that forgiveness is not a weakness. It is a strength. It is the hardest thing I have ever had to do, but it was also the most rewarding. And I want to thank you. For never giving up on me. For believing that I could change. For giving me the chance to become the person I am today. I pulled her into a hug, holding her close. I am proud of you, Emily. I have always been proud of you. Even when you made mistakes. Even when you hurt me. I never stopped loving you. And I never will. She cried in my arms, and I held her, feeling the years of pain and regret finally melting away. We had come so far together. We had faced so much. And we had emerged stronger, closer, more united than ever before. The family that had been broken was now whole again. The party continued late into the evening. The sun set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The twinkling lights came on, casting a magical glow across the garden. People danced, laughed, and celebrated. I watched it all from my armchair, a glass of lemonade in my hand, feeling a deep, abiding peace settle over me. This was my moment. This was my reward. This was the culmination of everything I had worked for, everything I had fought for, everything I had survived. I had come through the darkness and into the light. And it was beautiful. As the evening drew to a close and the guests began to depart, Emily and her family stayed behind to help clean up. We worked together in comfortable silence, the exhaustion of the day settling over us. When the last of the decorations had been packed away and the last of the dishes had been washed, we gathered in the living room. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting warm shadows across the walls. The children were asleep in the guest rooms, exhausted from the day's excitement. The adults sat together, enjoying the quiet intimacy of the moment. Dad, I want to tell you something, Emily said, breaking the silence. Something I have been thinking about for a long time. He looked at her, waiting. I know you have been writing your memoirs. I know you have been documenting your life story. And I want to ask you something. Would you let me help you publish them? I think the world needs to hear your story. I think there are so many people out there who could benefit from your wisdom, your experience, your courage. Your story could inspire others to stand up for themselves. To fight for their dignity. To never give up. He was taken aback by the request. He had never considered publishing my memoirs. He had written them for myself, for my family, for the grandchildren who would never know me in person. But Emily was right. There were others out there who needed to hear my story. Others who were facing similar struggles. Others who felt alone and hopeless, who needed to know that they were not alone. That there was hope. That they could survive. I would be honored, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I would be honored to share my story with the world. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Emily and I worked together to edit and refine the manuscript. We reached out to publishers and literary agents. We shared the story with anyone who would listen. The response was overwhelming. Publishers were eager to release the book. Readers were hungry for stories of hope and redemption. The book was released to critical acclaim, receiving glowing reviews from readers and critics alike. He was invited to speak at conferences, bookstores, and community events. He shared my story with thousands of people, touching hearts and changing lives. But the most rewarding part of the journey was the letters I received. Letters from people who had been inspired by my story. People who had been taken advantage of by their families. People who had been betrayed by the ones they trusted most. People who felt hopeless and alone. They wrote to me, sharing their own stories, thanking me for giving them the courage to fight back. I read every single letter, tears streaming down my cheeks. I had never imagined that my story would have such an impact. I had never imagined that the pain I had endured could be transformed into something so powerful and meaningful. One letter, in particular, stood out. It was from a woman named Carol, who had been in a similar situation. Her own son and daughter-in-law had taken over her home, drained her savings, and planned to commit her to a nursing home against her will. She had felt trapped, helpless, and alone. But after reading my story, she had found the courage to fight back. She had contacted a lawyer, gathered evidence, and taken legal action. She had won. She was free. Her home was hers again. Her life was hers again. She wrote to thank me for giving her the strength to stand up for herself. For showing her that she was not alone. For giving her hope. I carried that letter with me everywhere I went, a reminder of the impact my story had on the world. A reminder that my pain had not been in vain. A reminder that I had made a difference. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and new challenges. I celebrated my 90th birthday surrounded by family and friends. I watched my great-grandchildren take their first steps. I held their tiny hands and told them stories about their great-grandmother, the woman I had loved and lost. I passed on the lessons I had learned, the wisdom I had gained, the hope I held for their future. I lived my final years in peace, surrounded by love, comfort, and the knowledge that I had made a difference in the world. My story was not just my own. It was a story of resilience, courage, and the indomitable human spirit. It was a story of survival. And it was a story of hope. On a quiet autumn evening, I sat in my armchair, looking out at the garden one last time. The leaves were falling, painting the ground in shades of gold and crimson. The birds were preparing for their journey south, their songs filling the air with a bittersweet melody. I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. I had lived a full life. I had loved deeply. I had fought bravely. I had won. I closed my eyes and let the peace wash over me, feeling the warmth of the fire, the love of my family, and the satisfaction of a life well lived. And as I drifted into a peaceful sleep, I knew that my story would live on. In the hearts of my children. In the memories of my grandchildren. In the pages of the book I had written. I had left my mark on the world. And that was enough. The master engineer had built his greatest structure. Not a building of steel and concrete. But a legacy of love, resilience, and hope. A legacy that would endure long after he was gone. A legacy that would inspire generations to come. And that, my friends, is the most beautiful legacy of all. The sun was setting over the garden, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. I sat in my favorite spot on the patio, wrapped in a warm blanket, watching the colors of the sky shift from orange to pink to deep purple. The birds were settling in for the night, their songs growing softer as the darkness crept in. It had been a long day, filled with visits from family and friends, laughter and tears, memories and dreams. But now, as the evening settled around me, I felt a profound sense of peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you have lived a full life. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you have made a difference. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are supposed to be. He thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. The years of hard work and sacrifice. The joys and sorrows. The triumphs and defeats. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me. The redemption that had saved me. The love that had sustained me. It had been a long and winding road, filled with unexpected twists and turns. But I had navigated it all. He had survived. He had thrived. And now, at the end of it all, I could look back with pride and say that I had lived a life worth living. A life filled with purpose, meaning, and love. A life that had touched others and made the world a better place. Emily came out to join me, carrying 2 cups of tea. She handed me one and sat down beside me, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "It is beautiful tonight," she said softly. "It is," I agreed. "Your mother always loved this time of day. She used to say that the sunset was nature's way of reminding us that even the darkest days come to an end. That there is always beauty waiting on the other side." She was right, Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. She was always right about so many things. I wish she could be here to see this. To see how far we have come. To see the family we have built. "She is here," I said, placing my hand on my heart. "She is always here. In our memories. In our hearts. In the love we share. She will never truly leave us." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. The first one twinkled brightly, a tiny beacon of light in the vast expanse of the night. He thought about Margaret, about the life we had shared, the love we had built, the family we had created. He thought about the years we had spent together, the memories we had made, the dreams we had shared. She had been my partner, my confidant, my best friend. She had been the light of my life, and even though she was gone, her light still shone brightly in my heart. "Dad, I want to thank you," Emily said, breaking the silence. "For everything. For never giving up on me. For forgiving me. For teaching me what it means to be strong, to be brave, to be resilient. I would not be the person I am today without you. I would not have the life I have today without you. You saved me, Dad. You saved me from myself." He reached over and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You saved yourself, Emily. He just gave you the chance to do it. You made the choice to change. You made the choice to grow. You made the choice to become a better person. That was all you. And I am so proud of you." She began to cry, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. I pulled her into a hug, holding her close, feeling the warmth of her love wash over me. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, the silence broken only by the soft sounds of the night. The crickets chirped. The wind whispered through the trees. The stars continued to twinkle overhead. It was a perfect moment. A moment I would treasure forever. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. I continued to enjoy my peaceful life, surrounded by family and friends. I continued to write, documenting my thoughts and reflections for future generations. I continued to speak, sharing my story with anyone who would listen. I continued to volunteer, helping others find the strength to fight for their dignity and their freedom. My health began to decline, as it inevitably does with age. My joints ached more frequently. My energy levels fluctuated. I spent more time resting and less time on my feet. But I did not mind. I had lived a long and full life. I had accomplished everything I had set out to accomplish. I had no regrets. One morning, I woke up feeling different. There was a lightness in my chest, a sense of peace that I had never felt before. I knew, with absolute certainty, that my time was drawing near. I was not afraid. I was not sad. I was ready. I called Emily and asked her to come to the house. She arrived within the hour, her face etched with worry. "Dad, what is wrong? Are you okay?" "I am fine, Emily," I said, smiling gently. "I am better than fine. I am at peace. And I wanted to see you. I wanted to say goodbye." She began to cry, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, Dad. You cannot say goodbye. You cannot leave me. I am not ready. I will never be ready." "I know, sweetheart," I said, taking her hand. "But it is time. I have lived a full life. I have loved deeply. I have fought bravely. I have won. There is nothing left for me to do. Nothing left for me to prove. It is time for me to go home. To be with your mother. To rest." She held my hand tightly, her sobs filling the room. I held her, comforting her, reassuring her that everything would be all right. I told her that I loved her. I told her that I was proud of her. I told her that she had made my life complete. And then, as the sun began to set outside the window, I closed my eyes and let the peace wash over me. The world faded away, replaced by a warm, golden light. I felt Margaret's presence beside me, her hand in mine, her voice whispering my name. I smiled, feeling the love and warmth envelop me. I had come home. I had finally come home. The master engineer had built his greatest structure. Not a building of steel and concrete, but a legacy of love, resilience, and hope. A legacy that would endure long after he was gone. A legacy that would inspire generations to come. And that, my friends, is the most beautiful legacy of all. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it touched your heart and inspired you to stand up for yourself, no matter what challenges you face. Remember, you are stronger than you think. You are braver than you believe. And you are never alone. There is always hope. There is always a way forward. Never give up. Never stop fighting. And never let anyone take away your dignity. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video. Your support means the world to me and helps me continue creating content that matters. Subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who might be going through a difficult time. Someone who needs a reminder that they are not alone. And please, leave a comment below. Let me know where you are watching from. Share your own story. Tell me how this story made you feel. I read every single comment, and your words inspire me to keep going. Together, we can build a community of strength, resilience, and hope. Together, we can make the world a better place. One story at a time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And never forget, you are worthy of love, respect, and happiness. Always. Goodbye, my friends. Until we meet again.